Most leaders that I talk to are working really hard to become more visible on social media, more visible on conferences, more visible, really going on the podcast circuit. And they're showing up everywhere they've been told to show up. And visibility is not nothing. It's actually really important. However, being seen is actually what matters, and building the infrastructure to be seen. Here's what I want to talk to you about today. Visibility is not the asset. Again, visibility is not the asset. The asset, the thing that actually compounds, the thing that actually earns trust and authority and the rooms that you actually want to be in, or people coming into your room, is what people believe, repeat, and assign value to after they see you somewhere. And this is what I call narrative equity. And most leaders are building visibility when they should be building narrative equity. Why does this matter in medical aesthetics? So we do know that medical aesthetics is one of the most crowded expert fields in this country. And I've talked to clients and, practice owners are saying, wow, it seems like there's a new practice, whether it's cosmetic dermatology or medical aesthetics, or they're just opening up, or plastic surgery on every corner, right? And everyone has credentials. Many are excellent, many are visible, but visible and trusted are not always the same thing. And we need to be really clear about that. And trusted and authoritative are not the same thing either. I know that I had talked to like a newer practice founder one time. She had reached out and we had a conversation, and she was like, I'm posting 4 times a day. And she's like, I'm not getting any traction. And I was like, baby girl, stop it right now. Do you have your first patient yet? And she was like, no. And I was like, you need to work on showing up in your community, asking your friends and family to be your first client, tabling at events, getting to meet the people where they are, because you may have the credentials, but you don't have the authority that the practice at the street has. Right. And I gave her some resources, some other people she could talk to or have you, because she wasn't ready for us yet. But that is something she really thought that posting 4 times a day was going to give her the authority enough for people to want to say, yep, time for me to go and see her. And that's just not how it works. And you know that already because you have a team, you've been doing this for a long time, and you're going to your next level. So let's talk about the structural problem that we have here. So when a leader's narrative is weak, when the market doesn't really have a clear story about who you are and, what you stand for, every single piece of media that you put out there actually starts from zero. And that's terrible. You could be doing even beautiful work and you could be starting from zero. It has to introduce you. Your media has to position you. Your media has to make the case for you. But when your media is strong, every touch point adds value to the same asset. My background's in finance, so I love to talk about things in, of finance terms, but it's an asset. And, the post, the podcast, the stage, the conversation at dinner, they all reinforce one thing. And that is what I mean by compounding, because you want to get that coherent message to build the same type of equity over time. And so the goal is a narrative, really, like I said, that travels without you having to carry it yourself. So let's go into a framework. We think about authority as something that follows a specific formula. So I talked about narrative equity, and that's what we're going to be getting into in this series. So origin story plus consistent output plus demonstrated results plus cultural proof times distribution equals narrative equity. Okay. And each of those elements is its own episode, as I had mentioned. And so today, what I want to focus on is actually, the concept itself. It's understanding the difference between visibility and equity, because until you see that gap, none of the tactics actually matter. And let me give you a test. So let's do this together. So narrative equity, like I said, means that the market can answer these 4 questions about you without you being in the room. Number 1, why does this person do this work? Not their credentials, their reason. Number 2, what do they keep saying that is worth remembering? Is there a line, a framework, a position that they're known for? Number 3, what have they proven? Not claimed, proven. And what evidence actually exists for that? And number 4, who else believes that this person matters? What rooms, institutions, clients, or communities have actually validated their authority? And so if the market cannot answer these 4 questions for you, there's some work to do. But at every stage, there's work to do. Your narrative is not quite built yet. And you may be visible, but you are not yet a cohesive brand that's associated with the thesis. And there's also a neuroscience dimension to this that I want to share with you. And so basically, Schreiner, Apfel, Isberner, and Richter actually said that narrative persuasion research says that story and strong argument shifts attitudes through transportation. They call it narrative transportation. An audience update their beliefs when moved by a coherent narrative. And that's really interesting. When you get pulled into a story, you actually update your beliefs after you've heard that story, after you've connected with that story. And I know it might seem so cliche, but storytelling is literally what has made the world move and civilizations grow from one level to the next since the beginning of time. All right. So what this means for you is that leaders who tell the best, most coherent stories about their work, they're not just likable, but they're more trusted, and they're more trusted at a cognitive level. And that's where you want to be. And that's why narrative equity, like I said, it's not a soft aspect. It's really a business concept. And so with that, I even think about, why I even do what I do. And I got started in this work because sometimes why you start something is not why you continue to do something. Sometimes you start thinking about something, you start ruminating on something more, and you're like, whoa, that's why I'm so attracted to this work. It feels almost like it's inevitable. So remember, I talked about narrative equity equals origin story plus consistent output plus demonstrated results plus cultural proof plus distribution. So at Diamond Hands Media, we have a process called excavation before creation. And this is one of my favorite things to do, whether it's an executive of a pharma company or it's, a founder of a practice. What we do first is that we go deep, right? And so we say, tell me your origin story, why you do what you do. Tell me about how that relates to what you do now. And we kind of go into this. And so what happens is that these people that are attracted to us and that we work with tend to have a really great origin story that really kind of informs their methodologies, their vision, their values, their principles, their judgment, the way that they work. And I know for myself, I'm able to see that. And my team is able to see that. I know for myself, growing up, my father is a minister, okay? And growing up, my father, he is also a singer. Baritone bass voice is so beautiful. And, I got my love of music from him. And that's why I even got into music. But what I noticed when I was a young girl, I would perceive things. When my dad would be preaching, he's very strict, and not everybody would love that, and they wouldn't really respond to that in a great way. So cultural proof, right? But when he would sing, this is when the people responded to him the most. And it was the most powerful because my father had a church organization and his distribution was churches. So he grew his church network, and the growth of the church network meant the growth of his organization. And so I said to my father, I might have been like 11. And then I said, hey, Dad, I was like, you should really be a singing evangelist because I think that is what is really gonna, I see that's your gift. It's like when people respond to you so well, I'm like, you should record an album. You should do something with that. My dad will always say, tomorrow, I'll get to it. And I would like look up the technology, all the things, and he wouldn't do it. And so what had happened with my father, he's more like retired now, but what had happened, instead of his church network growing, which was his distribution, that cultural proof because of something that was so beautiful that people connected with on a visceral level, he focused on being a very strict disciplinarian as a minister, and actually his cultural proof shrunk and his distribution shrunk because people didn't like the way that people don't like to be told what to do, right? It's just what it is. And so when I see an executive or I see a practice founder in front of me who has a talent, who has a story, who has something that they did and they got some results, but they didn't really go that way, I see it and I'm like, that is a thing that makes you you. Let's dial down into it and let's make a coherent message. And so, is it too late for my father? I love him. Yes, it's too late for Dr. Tracy, but it's not too late for our clients. And that's why I do what I do, right? Because that narrative equity is something that's built over time, that compounding of the positive experiences. Now, I want to kind of give you a concrete test, something practical that can help you right now. Okay. If I ask 5 people in your market who have seen your work, attended your talk, followed your account, or sat across from you at a conference, what are you becoming known for? Would they say the same thing? And so I asked this question to almost every leader that we work with in the beginning. And most of the time, the response is hesitation. And sometimes it's a partial answer. Sometimes it's, I think they'd say this, but it's followed by different things. And that hesitation for me is really the data. It means that the narrative hasn't really landed yet on a personal level. And it means that the market is still assembling a picture instead of recognizing a position. And it's okay. That could be fixed. And here's what I know from years of, me and our team doing this work is that the leaders who have the narrative equity are really the ones who posted the most. They are the ones who said one true thing in many different ways over a long enough period of time until the market knew it by heart, but it was expressed through the corporation that they built, the practice that they built, that they were at the helm at because they were having those conversations, those judgment calls with their team members and leadership teams over the years, right? But that mentorship at scale didn't happen, that those methodologies didn't happen, and they don't own their own personal brand asset, which is the challenge, because what will happen, great people do things, then they disappear. Great people do things and then they disappear and they don't leave anything. And so this is not personal branding. I really call this media architecture. I want to give you something, like I said, today that you can use. So I want you to write this. So get a pen and paper, pause this, come back. I want the market to know me as the person who blank for blank because blank. And then I'll give you a practical example. I want the market to know me as the person who makes preventative skincare the default conversation for Gen Z patients because catching someone at 24 is more powerful than correcting them at 44. Why is that type of statement powerful? It's because that's a practice where patients come back because they are maintaining something, not because they're fixing something. And we know practices where they don't talk about preventative care and things like that, and then patients have challenges in 10, 15 years. The market has changed quite a bit. It's becoming more of an ecosystem, but that was definitely something a few years ago even. But again, I want you to write, I want the market to know me as the person who blank for blank because blank. And so the first blank is your specific standard or approach. Not I help practices grow. That's just too general. So you saw how granular I got. And something more particular, the thing that is distinctly yours. And the second blank is the specific person or institution that you are built for. Not everyone in aesthetics. That's too broad. The person who would feel relief reading your name on a speaker list or seeing your name when they're at a community event and they're meeting you for the first time, but they heard of you through the grapevine. The third blank is your reason. That's not your credential. It's your conviction. It's the thing that makes this work feel inevitable for you. And once you have that sentence, here's the last thing I want you to do. Go look at your last 10 pieces of media. And is that sentence living there? Are you teaching it, proving it, or demonstrating it? And if not, and this is important, what you're going to want to do is you have more work to do building your narrative equity. And you're creating fragments right now. And like I said, that's okay. Every business gets to this point where you have to get more cohesive, but the market cannot assemble fragments into authority. And that's not the market's job. It's your job. And so the first question is not, how do I get more visible? The first question is, what value is my visibility compounding? Because visibility without authority is, I remember in the Bible, it says like a sounding brass and a tingling cymbal. It's just noise, right? That's all it is. And this first episode that we're doing, this is in a series that I'm calling How Authority Actually Compounds. And so each episode is going to give you one ingredient: origin story, consistent output, demonstrated results, cultural proof, distribution. One concept, one exercise. If this gave you language for something that you've been feeling or sensing, that's really the point. So these are the ingredients. And at Diamond Hands Media, we've helped serious builders in medical aesthetics own their authority in the market since 2020. And we do that through brand strategy, leadership media, and advisory that operates at the leadership level, not the marketing level. We build the architecture.